President Trump earlier in the day. What is the Israeli reaction to news that the deal, according to President Trump at least, has been done? What will it be?
Well, in the Israeli media, Adrian, there is a lot of chatter. There is a lot of discussion and basically a lot of lamenting about what has happened. In fact, we saw and we tracked commentary from senior security correspondents. These are people who are usually thoroughly and accurately briefed by the Israeli security establishment. And they said that instead of collapsing the Iran-US talks like Netanyahu had hoped with that Dahye airstrikes, what happened was the exact opposite. Netanyahu lost his chance and the talks accelerated, and now there's this deal. This is seen as a political blow to Benjamin Netanyahu. During the cabinet meeting, the talks were interrupted by a call between the Israeli Prime Minister and the U.S. President, as well as the Israeli Minister of Defense and his American counterpart. Even those phone calls did not derail the train that had apparently already left the station. The deal has been cut, and now, according to the wording that we're seeing, Israel is expected to comply. Now, of course, the devil is in the detail. The signing, as we saw, will be on the 19th of June. That's a few days from now, and that's a lot of time to try again, if the Israeli government wants to collapse the talks or to collapse the deal altogether.
Al Jazeera's Noor Odeh reporting live there from Ramallah in the occupied West Bank. For the moment, Noor, many thanks indeed. Let's go back to Washington and our White House correspondent, Kimberly Halkett. Kimberly, a lot seems to have happened in the last, 50 minutes. Marwan was echoing a few moments ago, Marwan Bashara, echoing your reporter's skepticism here about at least what President Trump was saying.
That's right. And, you know, I'm going to apologize and be the Debbie Downer, as we say here in the United States, and continue with that skepticism. And here's why. We've been here before. I was looking back through my notes, and Donald Trump has announced breakthroughs before. As far back as October of 2025, he said the U.S. and Iran were ready to reach an agreement. Here in Al Jazeera, June 11th, just days ago, within the last week, the U.S. president once again announcing breakthroughs and agreements with Iran before there's been any sort of implementation or signing of the Memorandum of Understanding, saying on June 11th, discussions have been approved at the highest level of the Iranian leadership. And as a result, those strikes that the U.S. was launching against Iran just in the last week, he canceled the final day of them. So the U.S. president has repeatedly since then been suggesting a deal is imminent. He said that it would be signed virtually on his birthday, today, Sunday. That obviously is not occurring, and it has a lot to do with the fact that the U.S. president outraged that the Israeli prime minister, the American ally, allegedly, basically derailed diplomacy with the attacks on Lebanon just within hours of this virtual signing that the U.S. president said would usher in 60 days of talks to reach the ultimate deal with Iran, as he called it. But given the fact that that diplomacy was derailed, my reporter skepticism in covering Donald Trump for so many years is that he needed to save face. And so he's doing one of two things. Not only is he doing that, but he's also trying to do something else he does when he projects in his True Social statements what he hopes to achieve, and that is calm the oil markets. Why? It's Sunday. They're set to reopen in the coming hours. And he hasn't made good on the promise that this memorandum of understanding was going to be signed. So as a result, when the U.S. president in his True Social post is saying the deal is now complete, he's aiming that at the financial market, saying, ships, start your engines, let the oil flow. That is a direct message to try and calm the financial markets, keep the price of oil down, because he knows that if that price goes up again because he has failed to accomplish what he said would be accomplished, that this is going to have a financial impact. So it appears, in coordination with the Pakistanis, that there has been given this diplomatic lifeline that will allow now for this, what was supposed to be a virtual signing on Sunday, to happen in Switzerland on June 19th, which I believe is Friday. And the Shehbaz Sharif, the Pakistani Prime Minister, has essentially said, look, there are going to be pre-discussions before there are the 60 days of discussions. In other words, that really lines up with what the Iranians have been saying, is that not all the terms in the Memorandum of Understanding have been agreed to, and they need more time in order to achieve that, in order to get this signed.
Our White House correspondent, Kimberly Halkett, live in Washington. Let's go to Mohammed Val in Tehran once again. Iranian state television says that Iran has forced the U.S. to accept the peace deal. Its official news agency, though, is saying quite a few other things, Mohammed, of interest. What do we know?
Yes, that statement on Iran TV, I think it's Iran TV commentary. They did not ascribe it to any high-ranking official in the country. So probably that's just the normal rhetoric that comes from an official TV. And it is also reflecting the potential or possible mood or understanding among the leaders. But also, on the other hand, Iran's Fars news agency has just said that an official statement from the Supreme National Security Council is to be issued regarding ceasefire agreement with the U.S. shortly. So there will be an official Iranian position announced shortly about these statements by President Trump. And that means that the Iranians have been ready for the two tracks. They have always been saying that they are ready for war, as they are ready for peace. I'm saying this even though I don't know yet what that official statement from the Supreme National Council will say, whether it is going to agree and accept what President Trump has just announced, or whether it is going to say something contrary to that. But the understanding is that this delay and this subsiding of the war rhetoric over the last couple of hours after the Iranians announced that the finger is on the trigger and that the response is coming shortly. Those are Iranian leaders saying that just a few hours ago. Now there is some hushing of this language. And we have talks, we have the Iranians saying to the news agencies that the leaders here are discussing and discussing these statements by the Americans. So understandably, there is something going on, not just the war rhetoric, not probably the strikes, something related to the peace deal. We don't know what it is, but it is something different from the language of just a few hours ago.
And Mohammed, while you've been speaking to me, so you won't have seen it, Iran's deputy foreign minister, according to Newswires, has said that the immediate and permanent end to the war and military operations on various fronts, including Lebanon, will be announced starting tonight. He's also quoted as saying that from tonight, the end of the U.S. naval blockade against Iran will begin.
Well, that means that the Iranians have now balanced their act. They have come to the conclusion that probably this announcement of a peace deal tonight is going to be a much stronger blow to the Israeli disruption process than retaliation with missiles. The understanding now is that the Iranians are going to go along with the Americans in this process, and there will be discussions in the next few days, and the two sides will apparently and expectedly do everything to try to make it happen next Thursday.
What or how, Mohammed, will the Iranian public react to this? I mean, anticipation has begun to build, especially there in Tehran, over the past couple of days, hasn't it?
Quite so. And let's go back to the statements of the Iranian president today, when he said something very interesting and different to his statements since the beginning of this war. Not very much different, but I mean, it's interesting what he said. He said, "We will not bow down to any power, but we consider ourselves responsible and accountable to the Iranian people. and their legitimate demands. Of course, by people, we mean all the people of Iran, not a specific movement or group. This, I think, answers to your question. There is anticipation and there is high expectations, high hopes pinned on the Iranian government to come to listen to the voice of reason and to consider the suffering of the Iranian people. There is a lot of voices that haven't even been expressed since the beginning of this war. The huge component of the population who are not only opposed to the government, but also opposed to probably the approach that has been taken over the last several decades in the Middle East by the Iranian leadership, and they think that it's because of the Iranian policies in the region that Iran is suffering the way it is suffering today. So these statements by the Iranian president indicate that there is some listening happening, some listening going on to the people in the street, to their demands, to their needs. Not all of them are on board, not all of them are supporting this war, even if they didn't talk about it. And those who support it, many of them support it out of a feeling of nationalism, not because they support it in principle, even though it is a war of aggression and it hasn't been triggered or started by Iran itself, but they think that Iran could have avoided it has it adopted different policies in the region and in its relationship with the outside world. So there is expectation, there are high hopes among the population that the Iranian leadership is going to do something to save the nation, and at the same time to listen to the voice of average people who have been suffering a lot, not just during this war, but decades before it.
Mohammed, I'll be back with you in a few moments. We were talking about Iran's Deputy Foreign Minister's statement, which continues that the Memorandum of Understanding does not mean trust in the enemy. We will take our own measures if we witness breaches from the other side, the Deputy Foreign Minister said. It is 22 hours GMT. This is Al Jazeera live from Doha. We're continuing our breaking news coverage of a peace deal announced by the US and mediators in Pakistan between the US and Iran. In a post on Truth Social, President Donald Trump has said the deal with the Islamic Republic of Iran is now complete. Congratulations to all. I hereby fully authorize the toll-free opening of the Strait of Hormuz and simultaneously herewith authorize the immediate removal of the United States naval blockade. Ships of the world, start your engines, let the oil flow. Iran's Deputy Foreign Minister has responded in the last few minutes. He says that the immediate and permanent end to the war and military operations on various fronts, including Lebanon, will be announced starting tonight. Well, mediators Pakistan have also announced that the peace deal is happening. Prime Minister Shehbaz Sharif said in a statement, following intensive talks, we're pleased to announce that the peace deal between the United States of America and Islamic Republic of Iran has been reached. Both sides have declared the immediate and permanent termination of military operations on all fronts, including in Lebanon. The official signing ceremony will be on Friday, the 19th of June, in Switzerland. With the agreement now in place, mediators will facilitate a series of meetings this week. These pre-implementation discussions will lay the foundation for the technical talks and the official signing ceremony. Al Jazeera's Mohammed Val is live for us in Iran's capital, Tehran. Noor Odeh is following Israeli reaction from Ramallah in the occupied West Bank. And Al Jazeera's White House correspondent, Kimberly Halkett, is live for us in Washington. Kimberly, let's start with you. Walk us through what has happened in the last hour with this, first of all, Wall Street Journal report stating that President Trump was going to make an announcement, and then he did. What did he say?
That's right. I've been in touch with the White House back and forth in the last few minutes, trying to just nail down where things stand and how all of this is playing out. And what is clear is that there is a breakthrough here in terms of the agreement with Iran, even if the timetable and what we expected might happen is now looking a little bit different. And as you point out, that has a lot to do with events that have transpired in the last few hours. What happened in the last hour is that the Wall Street Journal here in the United States began reporting that the U.S. president would issue the statement you just read out, that there had been an agreement reached between the United States and Iran, and that the U.S. president in that announcement doing a couple of things he said wouldn't happen until that memorandum of understanding was signed. But again, because of the incident that occurred hours earlier, that attack by the Israeli military in Lebanon, it did start to look like things were falling apart and that there would not be that agreement that the U.S. president suggested would be signed on Sunday and that would be signed virtually. But we now know, given the fact that the U.S. president has put out this statement, that the agreement still stands despite any attempts to derail diplomacy. Things are in place, but that virtual signing is not going to take place on Sunday. But according to Pakistan's prime minister, it will now take place in Switzerland on June 19th, and that there will be discussions leading up to June 19th in order to get things, those T's crossed and those I's dotted in the memorandum of understanding. So this is significant because the U.S. president promising that by Sunday there would be a deal laid out, and now announcing in the last hour that that deal with Iran has been finalized.
In his Truth Social post, the president said that the Strait of Hormuz is open. Just how important is that for him and for the United States right now?
You can't underscore how important it is having the Strait of Hormuz open for the U.S. president. There are a couple of reasons why. First of all, Donald Trump is keenly aware of financial markets. And being that this is Sunday night, those financial markets are opening up in Asia. And then it will continue on. And this announcement, many in the financial world, the oil traders, the insurers, were all holding their breath, waiting for this signing to happen, and also for the Strait of Hormuz to be open, for the U.S. to end its blockade. If that didn't happen, the impact on the financial markets would be devastating. So Donald Trump, knowing that, was good on his promise that this would be delivered on Sunday. But he also had another reason he needed to do that, and that was because of domestic pressure here in the United States, not just because of the price of oil and the concern that that would translate into higher consumer prices, but also politically. The U.S. president not only under enormous pressure to deliver on this deal because of his Democratic critics, but also for those hawks within his own Republican Party who insisted the U.S. president needed to get this done.
Earlier when we were talking, Kimberly, you sounded a note of skepticism about all of this. What are we to read into the fact that this announcement that the deal has been done comes on President Trump's 80th birthday?
Well, there's no question that it seemed like the Israeli prime minister delivered not a very nice birthday gift to Donald Trump on his 80th birthday. No question about that. And there is reason to be skeptical of this accomplishment, given the fact that Donald Trump has announced before that an agreement has been reached with Iran, only to see it derailed. And so the skepticism isn't just on the part of the media. There are also Donald Trump's critics that will also suggest that as well. But the bottom line in all of this is that what Donald Trump often does is, and this is why he's called the deal maker, is that he projects what he wants to have happen. And in this case, there may be an element of that. But at the same time, and I don't want to step on the toes of my Iranian colleague who's coming after me, it does appear that some of what has been agreed to is now starting to be confirmed from the other side.
Al Jazeera's White House correspondent Kimberly Halkett reporting live from Washington. Kimberly, I'm sure we'll be back with you within the hour. Within the last few moments, Iran's Deputy Foreign Minister, Qasem Garibabadi has been giving an interview to a local Iranian television channel. We were reporting on some of the things he said about 10 or 15 minutes ago. That interview has gone on, and the Deputy Foreign Minister has said that this memorandum of understanding doesn't mean that there's trust in the enemy. He said, "We did not agree to the MOU until we incorporated our final demands into the text." He said that Iran's armed forces will always, quote, "have their finger on the trigger," and that the 60-day period negotiations will focus on the ending of sanctions. Let's go live once again to Tehran. Al Jazeera's Mohammed Val is there for us. So we've been hearing from the Iranian president today, as well as military commanders. What are we to make of all the comments that are coming out of Tehran right now, particularly from the deputy foreign minister?
Well, I think he struck a positive note in his statements to balance those that you have just mentioned about suspicion and about precaution and so on. He struck a positive note in some of the lines here. He said, "Today we spent long hours with the Qatari delegation in Tehran to discuss the memorandum of understanding and our observations on it. Two issues will happen immediately as of this morning. The first is the end of the war on all fronts, permanently and immediately on all fronts, including Lebanon. The second is the lifting and termination of the naval blockade that the United States had imposed on the Islamic Republic of Iran." And then he said after that, Iran's commitments will begin after the official signing on Friday. It's interesting that this day has seen the utmost level of alert and emergency feelings here in Iran. Escalation imminent with the Israelis, and hours later, just a few hours later, we have this language coming from the Iranian leaders, that understanding that they have agreed to this memorandum of understanding and that they have agreed to begin the implementation starting from this morning. So this is something that is going to supersede most of the rhetoric that has been repeated throughout the day and the last few days, but it's not going to be a final mood here in Tehran. There will be suspicion all the time, as you mentioned in his statements. There will always be suspicion towards the Americans until they see a final peace implemented and until they see the Americans make good on their promises within the framework of this memorandum of understanding.
To what extent, Mohammed, might Iran feel that it's been railroaded into this deal? What concessions might Iran have been forced to make to get this deal?
Well, up until now, they are refusing to admit that they have been forced to give any major concessions. Quite to the contrary, they are saying that all the points, or most of the points, at least those that are in the memorandum of understanding, boil down to something that is good for the future of Iran, the lifting of the blockade on the Strait of Hormuz, and they are still talking about future ability for Iran to collect fees on the ships passing, even though the Americans are saying no toll is going to be involved in that situation. So this is something that is not finalized. The Iranians are saying only good things about the memorandum of understanding. The including of Lebanon, if it holds, if it happens, it will be a huge victory for Iran, particularly if it is going to be followed by an Israeli withdrawal from the land that it has occupied since the beginning of this war. And that's the most difficult point in the entire discussion between the Americans and the Iranians. In terms of concessions, yes, on the nuclear file, there is an understanding here in Tehran that there's going to be some concessions in that regard in the future, in those 60 days of negotiations. They're not going to hand the uranium that they have. They're not going to let it be taken from the country abroad, but they're going to agree to some kind of reduction of the level of that 60% that is there. They're going to agree to its reduction within the Iranian territory here, but not outside Iran. That's the only tangible concession that everybody here is expecting, and that the Iranians are already hinting at. Otherwise, they are saying that Iran will come out stronger and in a more prosperous, in a more favorite situation from this war, particularly if the sanctions are going to be lifted and if the assets, the financial assets, is going to be unfrozen and handed to Iran.
Of course, we know very little about what's in the deal itself. In fact, Pakistan's Prime Minister said that there will be further pre-implementation discussions, laying the foundation for any technical talks. But the feeling is that Iran, at the very least, will be poised to gain some sort of sanctions relief. And of course, it hasn't capitulated militarily. Will that allow Iran to present this as a win?
Absolutely, absolutely. Just the fact that Iran's missile program is not discussed, is not included in the memorandum of understanding, and it is not expected, at least from what we understand, from what they are saying here, it's not going to be included in those 60 days of discussions about the final peace deal. That may change, of course, but at least this is what they say now. If just that point means that Iran has not just come out from this war undefeated and not destroyed, as the Americans and the Israelis announced as a goal at the beginning of the war. It has survived the war, and it has kept its missile program, and it has kept its nuclear material, and it will have lifted the sanctions, had the sanctions lifted, and the money returned to it. So what else do the Iranians want from this situation? Yes, they lost their leader, they lost their supreme leader, they lost so many of their senior commanders and political leaders. Hundreds of people were killed, civilians, innocent civilians, a lot of destruction in the infrastructure. But they are saying here that this is something that is worth the sacrifice to preserve Iran's dignity and to maintain Iran's leverage and Iran's standing among nations. They have proven during this war, according to their rhetoric, that it is difficult to just slash Iran from the map and destroy its civilization and dominate its skies and so on. That's something that the Israelis have been wishing for, and even the Americans probably, according to what is being said here. So that is not going to happen. Iran is going to continue to be a player in the region. It is going to force the Americans to lift the sanctions through negotiations and through its self-defense. It is going to have its economy reconstructed in many ways, I mean, depending on these points that I have just been discussing. So yes, they are framing it as a victory on all fronts.
Al Jazeera's Mohammed Val, live in Tehran. Mohammed, we'll talk to you again a little later. Well, this deal comes just hours after an Israeli attack on the southern suburbs of Beirut, which President Trump